20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Tech in 20. We are the broadcast that brings you news on everything happening in the world of interactive media, social media, digital media, and all sorts of internet goodness. And as we are quickly approaching the beginning of year number 4 for our show, we want to direct you to techin20.com. There you will find an entire archive of all of our shows, from great guests that we've had in the past, from various industries, really interesting topics of discussion, spanning the gamut from government to politics to sex to religion, you name it. If it's happening in media, if it's happening online, if it's happening in the world of technology, we are looking forward to covering it and talking to people who are movers and shakers. And as always, tonight we are your hosts. My name is Louis Sandoval.
And my name is Jennifer Navarrete, and this week we've been talking about how to get the most out of events, how to work an event, both from an attendee standpoint and also an organizer standpoint, both from real-world events and also virtual events. And we're very, very happy to bring together 3 panelists who are going to share with us their experiences at the recent BlogHer 2011 event. We have Julie Piper, Whit Honey, and Debbie Fitzenmeyer, who are going to be sharing all of those gems from that amazing event. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you. So now that we have all of you wonderful guests on the show, you all had an amazing experience in San Diego at BlogHer11, and I would love to get from each of you, starting with Debbie, then Julie, and then wrapping up with Whit, because as a guy, I'm really looking forward to the answer to this question. Why BlogHer11? Why did you choose to go to this conference?
You know, I think for me, I sort of fell into it in that tickets were presented to me, and it just sounded like too much fun to head out to San Diego. So from my perspective, it started more as just a fun trip with the understanding that I might be able to garner some great information out of the conference, specifically as it applied to my own blog, Essay Busy Kids, and also to learning more about the way that brands work with bloggers, which both as a blogger and as a professional, I was really interested in learning more about. Julie, how about you?
I've gone for quite a number of years. I think this was my 4th or 5th. I've lost track, actually. And I've always gotten a lot of value out of it. When I first started going, it was a much smaller conference. It was easier for that face-to-face and finding people you wanted to connect with. Now it's much larger, but it's also a lot more sophisticated. The panels were interesting to me, but I was also very much intrigued by some of the brand-sponsored workshops that were very specific to my industry and what I work at. So that was appealing to me. It's always a good time. San Diego, who doesn't want to go there? Who doesn't want to see friends? But it's also a good chance to build skills that I can bring back to my work.
I went to BlogHer as a man because I work with the answer is not going to be nearly as exciting as the question would lead you to believe. Basically, I work in an environment that is very heavy with women. I had to word that correctly so as not to say heavy women. I don't want to, but I wanted to go there and meet people face to face if I haven't met them before, and if I have, spend some more quality time with them. And BlogHer offers an opportunity for everyone to be in one place, which is rare, and it's fantastic.
Very good clarification there, Whit. I have to give you a hat tip and a pat on the back for making that clear. This is a big event. It started off just like most events as something that's small, and then, of course, it's grown in scope as the interest in blogging and social media and being in the online space has increased. And so I'm curious how each of you kind of went to try and get the most out of this event? Were you strategic about it? Were you loosey-goosey? Was it a mixture of the two? And what are some tips and tricks and suggestions you have for folks who may be attending a large-scale event themselves in the near future? And I'd like to start with Julie, and then Whit, and then Debbie.
I went kind of on two levels. I went both loosey-goosey, as you put it, and I also went somewhat organized and structured. Starting with the organized side, what BlogHer11 offered that was brand new this year was a smartphone app that enabled you to see panels and speakers lined up, add them to a schedule that you could use. You could view it day by day, hour by hour. It was very useful. It was very organized. It was very quick and easy, very one-click. That enabled me to go through, select the panels that I thought would really be of interest and also of value, and add them right in. Sometimes that meant 3 in one time slot, but then I could, on the fly, kind of make a decision as I got a little more information. But I also went loosey-goosey. The very first day of the conference, I spent most of the day poolside. It was a beautiful, huge, wide-open pool. I knew it would attract a lot of people to come down there, and it was a comfortable place to sit. A friend of mine and I sat down there for quite a number of hours, caught a lot of people walking by just to say hello, hey, it's good to see you, now I know you're here, this is wonderful. We sent out tweets, come join us down by the poolside. Some people came down, looked for us, got the opportunity to talk to some people that I might normally not have necessarily crossed paths with. And I kind of kept up that same attitude throughout the conference of some loose networking and then also some organized panel and workshop attending.
There seems to be this proliferation of women-centric conferences. We've seen Mom 2.0. We're now looking at BlogHer, and I know there's a lot of others out there. Why the heavy focus on women? Why now? And what's their status within the world of technology and media? Because it seems to be an interesting shift in focus, and a lot of brands are really paying attention to women. So kind of share with us a little bit about, I guess, particularly for Debbie and Julie, why this is such an important and vital topic to all of us.
I don't have the statistics right in front of me, but I was just looking at some statistics today that talked about not only the buying power of women, but also the persuasive power of women bloggers specifically. Julie, do you know what those statistics are by any chance?
I don't off the top of my head, but I know that women buying power is well into the 80 percentile, and the persuasion, I think, is similarly focused in the 80 percentile. People are more likely to buy from people they know and trust, and when you're a blogger, you build a relationship with your readers, and then you become someone they know and trust, if you do it right, of course.
And I think that that's partly why brands are, courting women bloggers, and why there's a growing number of organizations sort of developing around women bloggers and now men bloggers as well to work with the brands and connecting with the bloggers, because they're realizing this influential group of individuals that are persuading their readers to go out and make buying decisions.
Yeah, and I think that for me, a second layer to that, moving a little beyond the business aspect of it, is a women-centric conference allows women to be the chief voices. When you go to tech conferences, habitually you find there just aren't that many women represented as panelists. I know that one writer for Forbes went to a conference, and there were only 2 panels that had any women speakers. Her deduction at the end of the day, and she thought those panels were very fluffy and emotionally focused versus tech-focused versus specific tactical or strategic tools or, plans that people should incorporate. She thought they were very fluffy, and her deduction at the end of the day, and I completely disagree with this, was that women just shouldn't go to tech conferences. But I think more importantly, this is an opportunity for women to actually have a voice. And whereas I find a lot of conferences that I go to very male-focused and somewhat sexist at times, BlogHer is, in fact, inspiring and empowering, and it gives an opportunity to hear women talk to women. And I think that's a really important conversation to talk about and look at. What do you think?
I've only been to women-centric conferences, so I work within the realm of parenting or family-based content, and a lot of those conferences until now, there's going to be a Dad 2.0 in Austin in March. But before that, all of the conferences have been geared towards women, and so I've kind of gone in as a guest to be a part of that environment and that community because that's my audience as well. So I understand what you're saying about the tech side of it, and that's unfortunate. Hope that changes, but I haven't had that experience. I've been on the other end of it.
It's so interesting because the fact of the matter is that typically I agree with Julie and Debbie that when, as a woman, you go to a tech conference, it's a very men-heavy. I've never really minded that much because the lines at the women's bathrooms are like they don't exist, whereas the lines for the men's bathrooms are like miles long. So I've kind of liked that. I have seen a transition in that in the last few years, where now we're getting equal parts men and women, which I think is cool. Now you're doing something that's a heavy women kind of a group. You're a parenting blogger, and you mentioned Dad 2.0. Are there things that if you're going to an event and you're kind of the minority, are there tricks of the trade to kind of get along with everyone, or is it pretty much an even keel? There's not anybody making any waves. The fact is everyone's there for information. It doesn't matter if it's a Dad 2.0 or if it's a Mom 2.0 or anything like that.
At the first blogger that I went to in Chicago 2 years ago, I felt a little bit of that. I wouldn't say anyone was making waves so much as people were wondering why I and the other men that were in attendance while we were there. However, at Mom 2.0, which I attended in New Orleans earlier this year, and then at this BlogHer in San Diego, I really didn't feel that at all. I felt like people were starting to encompass the parenting community as opposed to the mom side of it. And that's obviously just in our little circle. Something like BlogHer is not geared towards just the parenting community. It's geared towards the whole women blogging community. So there's a little bit of overlay there, whereas the Mom 2.0 obviously is geared more towards the parenting writers.
Now I'm interested with specifically kind of on your experience at BlogHer. It's kind of daunting perhaps for some to see that there's a very small number of males surrounded by a very large number of females, considering that the conference target was BlogHer. But I think what's really interesting is, despite the title of the conference, I am more than positive there are men who go to the Mom 2.0 conference, and that there are, obviously men like yourself who went to BlogHer. Talk to me a little bit about the acceptance, if you weren't accepted, and kind of how you play a role in the dynamic of being around all those women.
I assume I was accepted.
We're not that mean. Wait a minute.
I assume I was accepted. People were buying me drinks. I don't know. It was. I'm a very social person, and I kind of go there for the networking aspect of it. And I really didn't have any issue personally at any of the conferences. The things I have heard were more things I've heard from other people. But at the Mom 2.0, especially, it was a very small group of men, but we were very well received. And I spoke on a panel there, and it was great. And the networking was fantastic. I actually walked out of Mom 2.0 with 3 new writing jobs. And it's great. I'm glad the Mom 2.0 people are actually the same people that are putting on the Dad 2.0. So there's that. It's based in success. Excuse me. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think it's interesting something you said there, Whit, and I think it's that one thing I know personally that you've made a lot of connections and relationships across the internet with a lot of these women. So when you arrived at that conference, a lot of them already had seen your work, had commented on your blog posts, had interacted with you, and I think that's one of the things with a conference like BlogHer. People have already done a lot of online connections, and one thing that I think is interesting is hearing you talk about coming to BlogHer as a man, where you felt accepted and welcomed into the community. Sometimes when I, as a woman, am in the minority and I'm at a tech conference or a similar event like that, a lot of times I feel like the men are just uncomfortable with my presence. And even though some of them might be polite or borderline friendly, the vast majority of them seem just a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not sure what to say. I'm not sure what to do, especially because so much of what I do is in the parenting sphere, and they're not really sure. They can't help but look at me kind of as the quote-unquote mommy blogger. So I think it's really interesting the diverse experiences you have at these different panels. But I will also say with the tech conferences, we don't do as much relationship building online. So these men don't really know who I am, and they don't really know what it is that I do necessarily. I think that's just kind of an interesting point.
That's a great point, because you walk in, you walk into these conferences already having a relationship developed with a lot of these people, even though you may have never met them. You know them.
I think that goes back to part of the preparation piece, Jennifer, that you had mentioned at the very beginning in terms of how do you prepare for going to one of these types of events. And that relationship building online prior to going is, I think, really critical when you're going to a large event and trying to network. Most of these events have hashtags, and following along on a hashtag and starting conversations with people is really helpful, because then you can sort of dig out those people once you get there, and you sort of already feel like you know them and can start in the middle of a relationship.
I'm listening to you guys talk, and it's so interesting because each of you has your own perspective, and some things are similar and some things are, unique experiences to, what you did over there. And so I just want to ask, as you're going through and you're looking at all of the sessions, were there things that, just from an organizer standpoint, because I do organize a lot of events, that you thought could have been done maybe a little bit better or could have been tweaked a little bit differently? And also, what were the things that hit you that you were like, man, that is awesome? So if we could start with Debbie, since you left off, we'll start with you. We'll go with Whit, and then we'll round out with Julie.
Okay, so some things that I thought were awesome. I think Julie brought up the BlogHer app. It was a free mobile app that you could download that listed all of the panels. It had a map of the hotel and the convention center. Well, maybe not the hotel, but the convention center. And so it was very easy to sort of navigate, and that was extremely helpful to have with you all the time. And I thought that was a tremendous benefit and a great tool to have on hand. Some of the things, what I didn't like, there were just so many events. There were so many things to choose from. It was a little bit overwhelming. I'm not sure how at an event like BlogHer you would stop that from happening. But one of the tools that I personally used that I really liked was Evernote, and I used it before the event and throughout the event, where I just I'm sort of crazy about that, and I kept my schedule logged into Evernote. I kept all of my appointments. I kept all of my contact information so that it was easy for me to access moving forward. And that was a really useful tool for me. Also, being able to identify somebody who knew everybody like Julie and just Velcroing myself to her throughout the event so I didn't turn into a wallflower was really helpful. That's not really something an organizer can do, but it's certainly something that would be helpful if you were putting together as an organizer a tip sheet for newbies on an event like this. And then also Birds of a Feather. BlogHer did an event called Birds of a Feather where you could come together around a particular topic like special needs blogging. And they had a specific panel, set of events and panels set around just that topic. And I thought that was a piece of brilliance. What about you, Julie? What did you think?
Well, I think you brought up a good point for me, and that was the no map of the hotel. That was actually very detrimental because a lot of the sessions that I was attending were at the hotel, and I was constantly trying to figure out where to go. And I'd either have to stand in a long line to the concierge because the hotel did not have maps that they handed out to us either, so it was very difficult to figure out where to go. This is something, Debbie, you actually mentioned to me, and that was that it wasn't always clear hashtags for the events or panels, that even though we were all assuming everybody was social media savvy and using it, there weren't necessarily clear directions as to where to go to get more information or clear directions as how to, talk about this online. And I also was a little frustrated because in the app, the contacts where people were, it was a good way to connect with folks, but it really wasn't quite working. So I think a good connection point for who's going to BlogHer, where you're not touting it out in public like on Twitter where all the people who can't go are aggravated by it would have been fantastic. But one of the really great things was we did up that sophistication level in the panels. There were a lot of business-oriented and skill-building-oriented panels. There wasn't so much of the how-to or introducing you to level things. It was a little bit more leveraging these tools and using them to help you build whatever it is you're trying to build. So I thought that was really, really well done on their part. What about you?
I would have to say that there really wasn't anything that I noticed and thought, oh, they could have done that better. I was very impressed with everything. Obviously, a lot of hard work goes into it. However, I will agree that, as Deb mentioned earlier, there is so much going on at the same time that it's really hard. It puts you in a position where you have to make choices between things you would rather not make choices between, and you have to spread yourself pretty thin. And that would be my biggest critique. But, at what price success, right? I mean, what are you going to do?
Right. There was one other thing, the Geek Bar, that I thought was really helpful. There was a room set aside, and you could set an appointment to go in, almost set up like Apple's Genius Bar at their stores, called the Geek Bar. And I thought that was wonderful. For example, the Google Plus team was there, and I was able to go and meet with them and walk through some questions that I had specific to Google Plus. And they had different experts in different areas working through some of those technical things that Julie was talking about. If you had a question about WordPress, or if you had a question about, setting up ads on your blogs, or I think there was even one about dealing with people who were trying to mess with your blog, hackers on your blog, how you could deal with that. So I thought that that was really helpful, the Geek Bar.
Well, here is one last question, because I think a lot of our listeners are also really curious about this, too. Obviously, discussions were great, sessions were great. You guys saw trends and discussions out there. So with our audience, Debbie, Whit, and Julie, in that order, if you could share one of your favorite sessions and perhaps some resources that our listeners can either click on to read or get more information about.
Okay, so I think my favorite session was not a session at all. I think it was actually walking through and visiting with the brands and interacting with those individuals, particularly the brands that had not sent their PR teams, but the brands that had actually sent their social community managers. I really learned a lot from those individuals, and they were very accessible, and they were very willing to talk to me. And I spent a lot of time in the exhibit hall just visiting with those individuals, and I thought that was probably the most valuable time that I spent there. In terms of resources to read or get more information, I still think that the BlogHer website, BlogHer.com, has a lot of great information. You can actually access the transcripts and the virtual conference on the BlogHer site itself if you go to the conference tab. So really, you wouldn't have to miss a thing just by clicking through those links. Julie?
Really quickly, I love the cyberbullying. I appreciate that BlogHer brought that up and put together a fantastic panel with great panelists discussing this issue and giving the audience a lot of opportunity to talk. You can get more information at civilanation.org. I also thought that the Power of Cause Marketing workshop, which was not quite a panel, it was a workshop that was in the hotel, it was really, really well done. It was about Jimmy Dean's No Kid Hungry campaign with Share Our Strengths, which was just a wonderful thing. And you can get more information about that by Googling No Kid Hungry campaign or going to their Facebook page at Jimmy Dean. I also loved that HTC was there, and they gave an HTC Innovator Award. I think that was absolutely phenomenal. They actually gave the award to a very close friend of mine, one of my best friends, Cynthia Liu, for her K-12 News Network. It's just done a phenomenal job of opening up education issues, and you can go to K12newsnetwork.com to get more information about that. Whit?
I didn't actually attend any sessions. I took advantage of being under the same roof with a bunch of people and had a series of meetings and FaceTime, and a lot of those took place in the bar. So I guess if you want to read something, maybe read up on your local liquor laws. I don't know. But it was a great opportunity to do just that, and that's nothing against the sessions at all. They're fantastic. I've been to them before, and I will go to them again. But this particular trip, I felt my time was best spent doing that.
Hey, the tacos and margaritas at the tequila bar were fantastic.
I kind of like the martinis myself.
Yeah, Whit, I've done the same thing. I did that at South by Southwest this past year, and I feel like I got so much more out of it by focusing on the people that were there and not having to try and rush from session to session. So I tip my hat to what you did, because I've done it too, and I've attended panels before too. So I think it's kind of a neat thing to mix it up and do different things each year to kind of keep it from being something that's boring and static and keep it lively. So I like it, and I really enjoyed the session with you guys. So, hey, folks, how can our listeners get a hold of the three of you? In what way, form, or fashion do you prefer to get connected? And so, Whit, we'll start with you.
You can find me in a number of places. I have my personal blog, Honey Express, but I'm also at Dad Centric, Baby Center, and as of today, at Man of the House. So I'm all over the internet. Just Google me.
And Julie?
Okay.
I'm pretty easy to find. I go by my name everywhere I am, so just Google Julie Piper, and you'll find my business site for Artful Media Group. You'll find my personal blog using my words. You'll find me on Monocrat. You'll find me on Blog Talk Radio as well with our Blog Talk show, Mama Chat. So just Google me and find me. It's pretty easy. And I'm also on Twitter as @JPiper.
So easiest way to find me is at about.me/Mom on Mars, and every other place to find me online is there.
Well, hey, folks, if you enjoyed this show, and I know that you did, you're going to want to connect with these folks, so go find them online. From what I can hear, all you have to do is Google them, and apparently they're pretty much the whole front page because you just can't miss them. And as always, if you want to find out everything about Tech in 20, you can go to techin20.com. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter because we're where you are. For Tech in 20, this has been Jennifer Navarrete.
And this has been Louis Sandoval.
Reminding you to get social. You've been listening to Tech in 20 with Louis Sandoval Jr. and Jennifer Navarrete. To the Moon theme music by Simon True. You can find more great music like this on the PodSafe Music Network.